Welcome to another episode of eBay Scavengers. This is episode 20, and we are talking about the global shipping program on eBay. You can leave us comments on ebayscavengers.com. That is where we are located. Okay, so eBay's global shipping program.
You have a choice on eBay if you want to sell outside of America. And a lot of eBayers I see don't like to sell overseas because it is a little bit complicated. There's custom forms. You know, if you sell overseas, oftentimes there's no insurance on it, and you can't even tell sometimes if the package gets there. So it happens. You know, one out of maybe every 100, every 200 won't get to the person, and you have to eat those costs, including the shipping costs.
Right.
And so, anyway, I think a lot of old-time eBayers especially just think it's more of a bother. So eBay started this program where now you just ship everything to a warehouse in Kentucky, outside of Cincinnati actually, and then they mail it to the buyer, and then they take care of everything.
Right.
And they guarantee it. So it's supposed to be a lot easier.
So the beauty of it in my eyes is if I get my package safely to the warehouse in Kentucky, then supposedly I am off the hook. So if my buyer says, hey, I didn't get this, you could say, you can call eBay and be like, yo, where's this package? The other good thing is there is full tracking the whole way. So all your tracking to Kentucky, once it gets to Kentucky, it says that it got relabeled and custom labels put on it. And it even shows you all the way through to the foreign, post office and delivery.
Now, there are some caveats to this, of course. Right now, the global shipping program is only for England, Australia,
and Canada.
And Canada only. So all other places, you still have to ship it on at your own. And maybe those are just those 3 countries that eBay's done some kind of deal with their government post offices to make this happen. Now, what the buyer sees, though, is they see all the costs up front. So like in England, they'll see the cost of the item, they'll see how much it will ship for, and they'll see all the fees that they have to pay, because they have to pay like a VAT tax and
a customs fee, a VAT tax, and an import. It's like ridiculous.
So my concern is that we're losing customers because when people like in England and Canada see these prices up front, they realize how crazy it is that they may buy a $20 item from us, but it may cost them $30 or more to ship it there and pay all the fees.
Right.
And so far it's been about a month?
Yes, it's been like a month and a half.
Right, a month and a half. And I feel like, I don't know, I'm still on the edge because we've actually had 5 different buyers who have either bought stuff from us or were going to, and when they realized how much it was going to cost, they actually emailed us to cancel the transaction.
Yep.
And we've had to give them back their money or just cancel it.
Right. Yeah, so that's definitely a bummer. However, we've had several, I would say we've had between 8 and 10 items where we shipped it, full tracking, it got there, it was great. Now, I will say this was actually a good thing that happened for us. I sent an item to someone in the UK.
A popcorn popper.
It was a popcorn popper because people use them to roast coffee. So that was actually the very first item we sold on global shipping. And then weeks later, I get an email message from this guy saying it's broken and doesn't work properly. And in my mind, at first, I was like, oh no, I'm just going to have to give this guy all his money back. But then I thought about it. It got to Kentucky all in one piece. It was fine. They repackaged it. So I called eBay and said, look, this guy in England said his thing is broken, so I think you guys should cover it. And they said yes, and they closed the case against me, and they refunded me, my payment from him, and they refunded him. So that's how the system is supposed to work, and it worked for me.
Right. So, we're going to still keep the experiment up. It definitely is a lot easier to ship that way.
Yeah.
I mean, especially to Australia, too, because that country has an especially difficult time, it seems like, in getting packages to buyers.
Right.
Most of our lost packages have happened to people in Australia.
No, that's not true.
No?
England.
England?
Now, the funny thing is, Australia doesn't have import fees, which is great, but Canada and England do. So, I've had the most problems with the UK. Or it's not so much that they got lost, it's that they were just delayed,
Right.
So,
In this global shipping program, buyers are actually paying for priority shipping, so it's more expensive for the buyer to ship it because eBay is charging them extra for all the custom tracking.
right, which is good for a seller in a way, because then you have like full tracking and someone can't be like, where is this thing? You just point them to the tracking. But then again, that is the great question that Jay has, where it's like, are we losing buyers because they're like, this is going to cost me $30 extra. I'm not going to buy from them.
Yeah, it's going to take us 2 or 3 months to really see some data, because we sell about 25% of our items are overseas. So and that's over the whole world.
Yeah.
So we'll have to kind of break it down and see if we're still hitting that 25% and see what percent of that is actually to England, Australia, and Canada.
Yeah.
Because it's great if it works, but if people are choosing not to buy, then it doesn't work, even if it would be simpler.
Right. Yeah. I really love the tracking, and I love that it's like insured. I mean, that to me is gold, because I had 3 people in the UK in a row open cases on me, like either the customs are too high or it's not here yet and it's been 7 days, and you're just like, whoa. So that was one of the reasons I turned global shipping on, because I was like, I just can't deal with this with the UK. Like, people are just way too impatient. But yeah, if people aren't buying, that just defeats the whole purpose, So I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell what we think of the global shipping program. If anyone else has experience with the global shipping program, you can leave us a comment or email us on ebayscavengers.com and just tell us how you're doing with the global shipping program.
It'll be interesting to see, because I don't know answers like what happens if someone buys through this program in Australia, they get it, they say they don't like it, then does eBay take it back and mail it back to us?
Right. Or do we say
charge us? Or,
you have to send it back to us directly, and like, how do I refund their money for like all the other import fees? Yeah, I haven't had that issue yet. That's a really good question. So I don't really know. The one thing I will say that's good is I've always had a good experience actually calling eBay. Like, there's some weeks where I call them every day because I have a question. So I always just like, if I'm confused about something, I'll just call them on the phone and just work it out,
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to Mikey about this. I mean, I think eBay definitely has a lot of kookiness to it. But, I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's a logical system. And I find like it works. And people get on the phone and they talk to you. And
yeah,
I think if you aren't crazy, then they don't treat you crazy.
I find that like the more calm and like friendly I am to my, agent on the phone too, it's just a lot nicer. I mean, if you're upset about a customer, I've found that they're there to help you. I mean, they don't always have like the best answer, but.
Well, I also find too that they read all the messages that you've sent back and forth. It's with a buyer.
Yep.
So it's really important to not be crazy or take things personally in the emails to a buyer, because eBay reads that, and I think if you're professional and just kind of calm and trying to sort the situation out, they'll side it's with you if the buyer is the one that's like getting crazy and all personal.
Yeah, I'll just cite an example real quick where I sold a hat to someone down in South America, and it never got there. We wrote back and forth. And I really pushed him finally just to be like, did you give me the right address? Because your address, number one, didn't have a postal code and looked all weird. And so he finally admitted that the address he had given to me was totally incomplete, didn't have a house number, didn't have a postal code. And so I just said, look, if it comes back to me, you have to give me a correct address and mail it back. So the story is he left, I think it was either neutral or negative feedback, and, just was like, I never got the item. And so I called eBay and I was like, look, I have like a whole chain of emails of him admitting that he gave me the incorrect address, and then he tried to give me another address that was still incomplete. They went in my favor and they removed the feedback. So that things like that where you have the paper trail of like back and forth. I mean, they'll read all of those and they'll be like, yep, this guy totally admitted his address was wrong.
Yeah, I find like being a pro in the message is important, because really what you're trying to do is to get the buyer to admit that they've done something wrong. I mean, not to try and trap them, but if a buyer is giving you bad address or they didn't pick it up from the post office, so the post office sent it back to us, if they can admit that they've done something wrong, then really eBay takes it your side if the buyer complains.
That's happened to me a couple times lately where someone, I was mailing a parcel to someone and they wanted it for like a present for a friend of theirs, but they didn't tell me their friend's name. So it gets sent back to me because they're like, oh, I had my name on my friend's address. You're like, okay, well, that's obviously not going to work,
Right.
And you just have to be like, you got to pay for shipping again. Sorry.
But, ultimately, I think as an eBay, a seller, you have to sell anywhere. And you have to sell to Russia, to South America, to Africa, to the Middle East. I mean,
yep.
It's a global world. It's really easy, and it just takes a little bit more time. And eBay's global shipping program, which I guess is easier, is trying to help people do that. Personally, I wish that they wouldn't do it, just because it kind of put a higher bar for people. So I feel like we were getting a lot more sales because we had less competition out there for selling overseas.
Oh, because so many other people didn't sell overseas. Well, I mean, honestly, like the old school eBayers, I just feel like they're not going to do global shipping program either.
Really?
You know what I mean? They're just like, well, I don't want to deal with it at all, And actually, the auction that we just had where we sold a necklace for a lot of money sold to someone in China. And I think that if I had turned off international shipping, we would not have gotten the price. I mean, knock on wood, they're going to pay for it and they're not going to be a scammer, hopefully.
Right.
But I don't think we would. I think we would have gotten half as much, if a quarter of the price,
Right. I don't know. But anyway, that's the cool part about being an eBay scavenger, is that we find things in the dirty, dusty corners of the thrift shops out in rural America.
And I sold it to someone in Beijing.
Right, in communities that don't even know these other places exist, and we're selling them old shoes and necklaces. And,
old shoes.
It's amazing. Wool coats. I mean, it's so cool.
Yeah, it's fun. I love it.
Yep.
I think all the time I feel like that, where it's like you just find this on a dirty shop, shelf in a basket buried somewhere, and then you just send it to like Paris,
I think we forget that outsiders see Americans as exotic, so all this stuff that seems real normal and kind of boring in America is Americana. It's like, and to someone in Sweden, something like that is exotic to them.
Or just cool, I sold like 3 fishing vests to someone in France yesterday.
For like $150.
Yeah, it was $150 worth of fishing vests. I don't know what the appeal was, but yeah, it's like very like sportsman, vintage sportsman Americana. Oh, and in Japan, they buy that stuff like crazy, like the vintage hunting vests and hunting jackets.
And that's the thing about being an eBay scavenger is, we're the ones that are taking something in a place where it's seen of no value and connecting it to the people that see it having a value.
Right,
you know?
exactly. And that's the beauty of selling globally as well, where it's like, yeah, something could be like really trendy in Japan right now, and the rednecks in, wherever could care less about it.
I'm telling you, I would love to see the face of one of our redneck neighbors where I find his old pair of like Red Wing boots that I'll grab from the thrift store that he threw away, and I'll sell to someone in, LA or in Paris or wherever, and they'll pay me, $60, $70 for a old pair of boots
or more. Some of those Red Wing boots sell for $500.
Or those Carhartt coats,
Carhartt jackets.
I'll buy them with, I'll get them with oil on them and dirt, just because a guy's been working out on the farm and he throws away because it's getting too dirty for him. But people like that look because it looks distressed.
Because it looks like you're a worker.
Right. So,
you're a farmer,
Yeah. So I love that.
Which is fun. But honestly, like if you go to the mall, which we never do, but if you go to those places, you see like distressed jeans and distressed jackets because it looks old and cool.
I've seen at Urban Outfitters, they'll even sell clothes that it looks like it's fraying, where it looks like,
it's got holes in it. Yeah.
It's like, Jesus.
Those old, those like old cotton t-shirts from the 80s, like I actually have a couple of those shirts from the 80s where it's that thin, like it's gotten so thin that you can like see through it.
Right.
Like they make those new at Urban Outfitters, and they sell them for like $90.
Yep. So,
I'm like, yeah.
So I think that's the thing about being a scavenger is like it's realizing that, there's value in almost anything to the right person. And really, the internet makes all that happen. It's great.
That's why we call our podcast Trash to Cash.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And really, we talk about this as a job, but really I see it more as like, we don't have a job anymore. It's more just a hobby,
Yeah.
Like I feel like, I'm doing what I would do no matter what, Right.
We would do this no matter what for our own, like, house or, our own clothes. And we already did this anyway,
Right.
I would never buy new
It's just
stuff.
a super bonus that we actually make some money off of it.
Right. And I don't want to sound so casual about it where we're like, this is just a fun hobby. We work on this every day.
No, I know, but it's like a hobby. If you're really obsessed about it, or if you're really into it, if you put a lot of time into it, but you get in that flow where you just kind of forget you're even doing it just because it's enjoyable,
right?
And it's a challenge, and there are mysteries to it, trying to figure out what something is.
Yep.
You're learning history about new items. So.
Yep, I love that too. I totally love that too. All right, so let's wrap this episode up. We talked a little bit about global shipping, but also just in general about being scavengers. So you can see us and comment on our podcast and talk to us on ebayscavengers.com. And we will talk to you next time. Thanks.
Yeah.